Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Real Deal Podcast. I'm Kiana, your host, and I'm here with Tiara. I got that right. Kat and Drew. What's up, guys?
Thanks for having me.
What's up? What's up? And
What's up?
nothing much. And today we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons, which, for the record, they're pumped about it. I have little to no knowledge about this. I've heard of it. I've just never played the game. So
Well, if you want to learn more about Dungeons and Dragons, boy, have I got the podcast for you. It's called the Real D&D Podcast, and it's hosted by me.
Soy
If
moi.
you didn't know, because I mean, obviously you guys are all watching it. Obviously, because who wouldn't want to listen to 2 hours of me?
Me and Tiara.
And we've got two very own players.
Hello.
2 out of 5.
Yeah, I play as Grayson. If you guys watch and you're like, who plays Grayson? That's I play Grayson. Yeah.
Oh, say hi to my grandma. My grandma loves you.
Oh,
It's
hi,
her birthday.
Grandma.
It's her
Happy birthday.
Happy
birthday.
Good day.
Happy birthday.
My grandma is obsessed with you.
Yeah,
That's so
really
funny.
appreciate you actually watching. So.
That's cute. Thanks,
Yeah.
Grandma.
Thanks, Grandma.
My mom won't even watch it.
Really?
My mom texted me this morning going, "Where's the D&D podcast? Why
Really?
haven't you sent it to me yet?"
Oh my
And
god.
I'm like, "You have a YouTube. You can look it up yourself.
Oh,
I don't
right.
have to send it to you every week."
Yeah, I think like today if we're talking about today, I think like the newest episode. I think it's
It
episode
was?
6.
Yeah, I
today.
saw it on-
Yeah.
Yes, or
Yeah, I
yesterday.
saw the episode posted on my YouTube notification stream. I'm like, oh, they just uploaded a new podcast episode.
And you watched it?
Yeah, of course I did.
Yeah. I'm so glad. Because it's so good and so awesome. One
and
of
so
my-
much fun.
So, my favorite moment so far from the D&D podcast has to be the squirrel moment
Oh yeah.
that you missed.
I missed it.
I'm sorry.
I would say the Taco Bell.
The Taco Bell
That
moment.
Taco Bell part was pretty
Taco
Taco
Bell was
Bell's in
pretty
my
great.
top 5.
I like the Taco Bell one. I thought I might as well just do that because I thought it'd be fun. So we so basically the bottom line is for D&D, it's a tabletop RPG game, but it's pretty open to like whatever you want to do. Like
You
there's
wanna go
like
to Taco
handbooks
Bell.
and stuff like that over there by Tiara she has. So there's like, there's the base and stuff like how you play it, but the really cool thing about it is that it's pretty open to like however you want to do, like however you want to play it, like whatever you want to do, like it's pretty much open. So
Yeah.
and it's a little
Okay.
different for ours because ours is set in like more like it's like Earth based, so there's only like humans. But for D&D though, there's a lot of different races. You can play a lot of different sorts of races and stuff like that. But for ours, it's just only strictly humans.
Okay.
My favorite thing about describing D&D to people is trying to explain the difference between races and classes to them.
Oh yeah.
And races is like what you look like, what you were born as. Classes is who you are inside.
Or humans. I don't know, but
Not you could be a
You could,
human,
yeah.
but you could also like be an elf, or you could also be like part dragon, or like many other options. I play a half orc in one of mine,
oh, that's awesome.
which is so fun.
A half orc.
So like orc, like is a class, and then I'm like half of that.
Oh, okay.
What's even the other half of the orc? Is it just
Human.
human?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
That's what I was wondering. I was
Raz
like-
is half human. Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, okay, if you're half orc, like, what's the other half?
Yeah.
But then there's like half elves, and that's like, half elf and then half human too.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of like open. There's a lot of different classes, and even people make their own classes.
Right.
There's a lot of like home brewing, which is basically just coming up with your own content for the game and stuff like that, which is a totally different beast. It's I don't want to say it's incredibly hard, but it's very like
Difficult.
time. Yeah, it's time. It
A
has
good
it's
example
a lot of time.
A good example of that is one of our players plays an artificer, which wasn't originally a class. It is relatively new. Howie, he plays an artificer. I see you.
He just bumped. Like,
And, but classes is basically like what you want to be. Like, you know how sometimes when you're a little kid, you're like, I want to be a firefighter when I grow up. Instead, you're like, I want
firefighter
to
class.
learn magic.
You want to cast spells, so maybe you want to be a wizard.
Or
That's a class.
like I want to be super sneaky, so you're gonna be a rogue. And there's many different options. You don't have to have magic. You totally could have magic. It's all up to you and what your character would do.
Right. Okay.
It's very fun.
But
Yeah,
then
it's a ton
also
of fun.
adding to that,
Some of 'em.
you make your class, you have your character in mind, and you can maybe give it a little backstory and stuff like that to make them interesting. So then when it comes to actually playing as them, there's obviously the role-playing element where you basically act in like act like your character and stuff like that with other people and describe kind of stuff that you want to do and stuff like that. But then also with all the dice here, there's a lot of different dice and a lot of different sides. But majority of stuff that you do is based on a D20, which is a 20-sided die like that. I don't know if there's some over there by you.
I have all of the D20s
You have all
right
of
here.
them. We were stacking, yeah.
I was stacking
We were
them,
stacking
yeah.
them.
Here's another
The
one if you were
D20s.
looking for it.
Oh, thank you.
So like a lot of stuff. So then you have like your sheet basically, and like you have like your skills and stuff like that, whatever. So then like based on like the stuff you do, you might have your DM be like, okay, we'll roll for a strength check or something like that, whatever. So basically, you would roll your D20, and basically whatever it lands on, and you also have different modifiers too. So you could have positive, like you could have +2, but you could also have a -2. Just depends on your stats. So it's kind of like just a game of luck in terms of how well you do.
Right.
The idea is that basically a 1 is like the absolute worst,
That's
and
a
then
critical fail.
yeah, and a 20 is like the best you can do. So like if you rolled, let's say you're trying to do a backflip, and then you say like, okay, roll an acrobatics check. If you roll and you get a 20, that means you did it amazing.
I rolled in that one.
So in that case, your character would not.
Not do the
They land
backflip.
flat
That's
on their
basically
face.
how it is.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the basic idea of like how, and then there's other stuff too. So like when you attack and stuff like that, like you'd roll D20 as well.
Okay.
And basically, depending on like a person's armor class, you either hit them or you don't. And in that case, if you do hit, you might use different dice and roll for damage.
Yeah.
So
It
there's-
gets really complicated once you get into like
Right.
combat and stuff like that.
There's a
When
ton
I
of
first
different
started
dice,
playing,
yeah.
combat was the hardest thing for me to do.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question because like there's so many dices here, and like do they all just depend on like
It entirely depends on what you're doing.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have D20, which is the dice you use the most. Then you have like D12, D10, D8, and D6, and a D4.
D100 as well.
And a
Yeah.
D100.
But you don't really use D100s a whole lot. I
No,
feel.
not really.
I mean,
Okay.
isn't this a D100? Yeah.
Well, okay, D100 you would roll one of these, which is like it's just like a D10, but
That
it's
and a D10.
zeros,
Yeah.
and then you roll a
D10, right?
another an actual D10. Where is the one? For 10, like okay, there we go. And then you would just do this would be like the 80, 70, 60, and this would be like the 1, 2, 3. It'd be that type of deal. Or you can
Those-
have an actual D100.
Yeah, I feel like that you really don't
The
use as
D100s are
much.
huge.
Right.
They're huge.
That one's like pretty rare. Like I haven't seen it a whole lot be used like
Yeah.
ever.
I've only
Which
ever rolled
ones?
a D100 once. Yeah.
The D100s are rare, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that's pretty rare to
Needing
use.
to roll one, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know specifics. Like isn't I can't think of specific like spells or stuff like that you would have to use a D100 for, but yeah, they're really rare. But yeah, basically, D&D mostly just surrounds around just using dice and rolling dice, basically.
Right.
But then also just depends, like you said, in terms of like what you want to do, because most of the times your DM would basically have an idea of how DM's short for Dungeon Master. So basically, you'd have one person that basically continues the story, talks, explains the stuff going on. Then you'd have your actual characters. So most of the time, if you're playing, even if it's a one shot, your DM would have an idea of like the story that you want to do, what sort of things they might want to throw at you that might attack you, or people you might talk to and stuff like that.
Right.
And it also just depends too, I think, in terms of how much you do like role playing, how much you do like combat. I feel like with the D&D podcast, it's more on like the role playing side.
Yep.
With like a little bit of combat. So I think I like that. I like having like the variation for sure.
Like
So-
for example, our podcast, the D&D
Quiz
the,
time.
the real D&D podcast, which is available on YouTube that you should totally look up as soon as you're done watching this episode, is mainly centered around role playing, but there is combat. I try to include combat every other episode. Didn't work that way last episode, but that's entirely the player's fault. Like I had it planned out, and then you guys went the other direction, and that's totally okay because it's player run. But it can be the plot is entirely different. Like my plot is college students trying to figure out why people are going missing. But there could be completely other different plots, like set in actual fantasy worlds.
Okay.
It entirely depends.
Yeah. Something I like about this campaign is the sort of freedom we have to sort of do anything. And as sort of a newbie DM, that's definitely hard to learn to sort of balance. Like, how much do you like lead and how much do you just let them come up with things like that? And I think Kat's done a really awesome job at like
thank you.
balancing
Because
that
Kat's
out for us.
great.
Kat is great. I am a first-time DM. This is the very first time I have ever done anything like this.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever DM. Like, if
It's
I do,
so
it
hard.
would have to take me a lot of like prep. I feel to actually do it. Otherwise, I
sure.
feel like I'd be so lost. I'd be like, okay, so what do you guys want to do? And just like let them like decide like what they do. I don't know. So
I mean, I definitely have prep work involved. Like, I spend about like 20, 30 minutes planning out what I want the episode to do. But how I have it mainly set up is that I have an overarching goal, and I just want you guys to end up at the overarching goal however you get there.
So then, like, yeah, so then there come time, like, you know, we have, like, the main story, whatever, stuff like that. But you as, like, a character playing it and stuff like that, again, you can do practically whatever you want. If you wanted to even, like, let's say you had a party of 4 people or whatever, and, like, you guys are all friends, you could just flat out be like, I'm going to punch this person and attack them.
Yeah.
Like, you can do that. Like, you could honestly just kill them, too, if you wanted to.
Like, I'm sure it won't happen, but it totally could happen, where Grayson just straight up punches Lawrence. Like,
Yeah.
that's a believable thing that could happen.
Steven, be prepared.
Steven, watch out.
It's going to happen.
I
I've
would
got some
run.
stuff planned tonight.
I would run if I were you.
I see you, Steven.
We see you.
Throwing down the gauntlet. Woo.
If not, I'll use my crossbow.
Oh, your brand new crossbow from
Yeah.
Walmart.
Like, for example, the
I've always
players
wanted a crossbow.
Apparently
play
you can get one-
D&D and you can get one from Walmart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
apparently, I was gonna say, yeah, apparently you can get crossbows from Walmart.
Really?
He was on the Walmart website last Tuesday while we were doing our session, and was like, "So, DM, it says that I can buy a crossbow from Walmart."
Yeah, no, because I think Steven's character, wherever he's like, yeah, we're gonna go shopping. He's like, let's go to Walmart, and I was like, sure, I'll go with
most
him.
unconventional
And then I was like,
place you could
I was
think of.
thinking to my thinking to myself, like, I was like, okay, I want my character to have a crossbow, and then he's like, let's go to Walmart. So I actually looked up, I'm like, on Google, I'm like, can you get a crossbow from Walmart?
Yeah.
So like to actually like make sense in terms of like, you know, if it actually makes sense. And I was like, okay.
And
I
how
look it
much
up.
was it?
Well, that's the thing. It's different because obviously, like in real world, it would cost like I think like I saw some from like $150 to like
Yeah.
$400, whatever.
Yeah.
And also just depends because DM's different, I guess, on like how level like or the level of like how strict they want to be. I feel like for you, it's not as strict in terms of like how much money we have. Also,
We have some rich players, like
Yeah.
rich characters.
Rich.
Also for D&D, currency is based off of like gold, silver, copper, and then like platinum. It's not like dollar bills and stuff
Right.
like that. I think we're making it like we're in a world like we're on Earth, so we like live in America, so we have dollars. But currency is not like something where like our campaign doesn't have a big. It's not very
Yeah.
important, I guess. So I think for you just assume like, okay, if I want to buy this, you'd be like, okay, let me think. Does this character seem like they would have the money to be able to
That's
purchase this?
exactly my thought process. Is
Yeah.
would this character have the money to do this? Yeah. Okay, I'll let it happen.
Yeah. So I mean, like, for stuff like that, it can make it a lot easier. But I mean, like Tiara was saying, like even with combat, with other stuff in D&D, it can be really in depth. But the cool thing about it is you can make it as simple or as like in depth as you want it to be.
Okay.
Like one time I sat in on my friend playing D&D, and the dungeon master was like, "So your backpack is exactly this big. How are you going to fit this in the backpack?"
Yeah, that just seems like
And
over the top.
then there's
Yeah.
other players who are like, "Here's a bag of holding. You can put
Yeah.
anything you want in it. Doesn't matter."
That's what I should.
And there's also a lot of magic.
Yeah. Similarly, I played in a one shot. It was supposed to be a one shot that was supposed to be 3 to 4 hours tops.
Dang.
And it ended up being 10 hours long.
Yeah, that happens.
Because our DM, who is a great guy, but he was like really obsessed with like the rules and like getting everything like right and like perfecting everything and doing legendary
I don't like people like
actions
that.
on us
Couldn't
when we
be
just
me.
wanted to play.
hate-
we just wanted to do combat. And
I
it
hate
was so
sticklers
hard.
like that.
It was so hard. I mean, it was still fun. But
Well, that's
That
good.
voice went
If
really
it's
high,
still
didn't it?
fun for 10 hours. Like, that's good. I
yeah,
would hate
toward
it.
the end, I definitely got tired, and like we were on a friend's like stream, like 24-hour stream that she was doing, and she was not happy at the end, and
Oh,
it was
no.
so.
I wouldn't blame
It's
her.
so long.
It was so. Oh my god, it was kind of scary.
Yeah, but that voice went really high when you said that. You were like, it was fun.
So,
You should have seen us at the
it's
end,
like
though.
that
We
long,
were
but
all
like,
like-
as long as you have fun, like that's I think what matters. But 10 hours, that's like long. And
Yeah.
if also streaming it,
Yeah.
that's even longer than. Nice segue. Longer than any other Critical Role episode I've ever watched before.
That's
Yeah.
so true. Speaking of Critical Role,
Which I know
So
nothing about.
okay, so
Critical Role
that's
is so
another
much
thing.
fun.
So I think Critical Role is definitely a good
guide,
vehicle to get into D&D if you want to watch other people play it.
Okay.
right?
So Critical Role is basically a cast of nerdy voice actors. They call themselves nerdy voice actors. So basically voice actors that work in like voice acting for gaming, anime, and stuff like that, whatever.
Okay.
So they basically come around, sit around, and play Dungeons and Dragons. And it first started out as these actual voice actors, if you can see. They basically were all friends because they knew each other from working on stuff and voice acting and stuff like that. They worked together and stuff like that. Others they met. So basically, they were all a bunch of friends that decided to play together, kept playing, and then at one point they thought of the idea to basically, how about we stream this like on video for people to watch it? So then they went on Twitch, and I think it was like 2015 because they just celebrated like their 7-year anniversary. They started streaming, and then right afterwards it started to explode with how like popular it got.
Yeah.
So what started out as just a bunch of people that just like playing D&D for fun and stuff like that turned into something huge.
It's a
literally
business,
literally
like a-
it's
yeah.
literally a company. Example, I have a Caleb Chibi pen. Came in like a whole package and stuff like that too.
What
like
is it
official
again?
stuff. This is a character that Liam right here, Liam O'Brien plays. So they've had 3 campaigns so far. Like 3 campaigns.
Kind of
and-
good looking too. Side note, but
So this is Liam's second character for campaign 2. This is his character Caleb that I really liked.
I liked Caleb too.
Yeah. So they've gotten so big and such a big fan base that they started to like being able to like make merchandise and stuff like that too. So this is just like one of those things. And then they came out with stuff like a book. Another thing is they had an animated TV show, Legend of Vox Machina, which came out on Amazon Prime.
And
the
it's
first
Which is
season.
very good, by the
Amazing.
way.
Very
It's
good.
amazing. If
But then they
you
came
have
out with
Amazon
like
Prime, you should
origin,
watch
like
it.
comic books. So this is one I got over Christmas time.
oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so it's like so like basically like a comic book version of like the origins. This is Vox Machina is their group's first, like the campaign 1, their group's name. So this is like the first campaign they did. This is like the characters they played as. But then they had stuff like this, with like this hoodie, and then on the back it says, I don't know if I can. show
Vox
it.
Machina.
Yeah, but it's basically like a. I don't know if I can.
It says Vox Machina. It's like Vox Machina.
Yeah, basically. Then this hat.
Oh
too is
wait,
also-
like I didn't. Oh okay.
So then they had stuff like that, and then like this hat as well. I got. I'm a really big fan. I think I started watching them. I think maybe like 3 years ago now or something like that.
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun. So I definitely think that's like a really like cool outlet. I think to look for like if you want to watch people actually play D&D. Because before that, before I even actually played myself, I watched them, and I feel like even just watching them, I learned a lot of like how it actually works and how like
Yeah,
you
for
play and
sure.
stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of people start watching D&D before they start playing D&D. Like I also started
Yeah.
watching D&D. I started with Dimension 20, which
Yeah.
is another D&D show. And I didn't actually start watching Critical Role until Campaign 3 officially started. That's when I started diving back and watching their older stuff.
I almost think Dimension 20 is a better introduction,
Yeah.
just because the episodes are so much shorter.
That is true.
Critical Role, like
Critical
you can
Role
be there
is
for
like
like
a
4
Big
hours.
commitment.
I think the longest one they had was the last episode of Campaign 2, and it was
Which was-
over 7 hours.
Yeah,
Dang.
Which was very long.
not as long as 10 hours.
And you know
Yeah.
and you also know what's not long? The Real D&D podcast, which you could stream on YouTube. It's only 2 to 2.5 hours.
It's not as long. So not on the level of like Critical Role or I mean even Tiara's other DM or other game that she plays. So
Yeah.
but it's a lot of fun. I think if you ever wanted to get into it, I'm sure maybe even you could just add someone else.
That's true. If you ever wanted to get into it,
Yeah,
hit me
It's a lot of
up.
fun.
I will. And like that's for me real quick. I am much of a visual learner when it comes to learning new things, so I will have to check that out. But I want to thank you all three for giving us some insight on D&D.
Woo.
And like Kat said, make sure you check out the Real D&D podcast. I almost messed that up and you would have killed
The
me.
Real D
But
The Real D podcast.
D&D podcast, but you get what I mean. And thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.